everyone, and welcome to the LTH product briefing. I'm Nikki Shaver, and I'm here today with James Quinn, the CEO and co-founder of Clarilis. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Nikki. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. Clarilis has been around for over 10 years in the market now and has seen increased market share steadily over time, which is great to see. How is Clarilis distinguishing itself in a crowded document automation market? What makes Clarilis a little bit different than other doc auto platforms?
Yeah, it's difficult, as you say. There are hundreds, if not more than 1,000 document automation technologies out there. And there's the legal category, isn't there? And then there's the general category of just technology, which can automate documents as well. I think for Clarilis, we concentrate very much on legal. We're known for working mostly with law firms as well. So we have in-house clients, but we're predominantly working with law firms. And we're known for tackling the most complex transactional areas of law. So that's our niche. We also offer the Clarilis platform itself, which is document automation and increasingly generative AI, together with a managed service. So where there's a firm that's working with its own templates, we will design, build, test, deliver and maintain the automation project, all within the fixed Clarilis license as well. So that's another point of differentiation for us.
And when people work with Clarilis, they are able to leverage the system, as you say, but also services to ensure that the outcome is the best possible it could be.
Sure, yeah. So there's over 60 of us. So we have innovation PSLs in-house, we have automators, we have analysts, we've got project managers, and we're really focused on just delivering the outcome for the firm. Often these projects take an unexpectedly large amount of kind of quotes legal time as well as automation time for firms. Let's say you're doing a suite of M&A documents or a banking security suite or something in real estate, then we wanted to bring that all in-house so that we could just be confident with the client that we're delivering for a fixed license exactly what they're buying. So rather than the toolkit, it's the end solution that we deliver at Clarilis.
And I love that focus on the outcome or the output is so essential in legal. And I know this is probably part of what you're going to show us, but just as a little precursor to that, can you tell us a little bit about how you've thought about generative AI and the way that it intersects with document automation?
Sure, yeah. So thoughts have evolved in the market over time, haven't they? So it was the great rush of excitement where generative AI could do everything, and then there was a thought in the market: do you need document automation anymore? Has this been solved by generative AI? And then when we explore further, and then we decide that actually, and this is very much our view at Clarilis, that template-based work still very much has a place in legal and is the gold standard. If you have a template, then use it. And so we build document automation projects, and the Clarilis approach is still valid in terms of getting you to like an 85% draft. And the way that we think of generative AI is that when you get to that 85% draft, then you may also need something which isn't catered for in the template, or there might be something which is so unique to your transaction that it would never be in a template document. And so can we get you a first cut of that content, which would require full review, get you a first cut of that content to get you further content, to get you further towards that first draft and to send that out to your client. So it's really a two-stage process now, in that you have document automation to get you most of the way, and then generative AI to supplement and get you closer to your first draft to send to the client.
It's fascinating. Thank you. And James, what are you going to show us today?
So I can give you a quick tour of the Clarilis system. I'm conscious that some listening to this and seeing this will have seen it before. So I will go light on what you might have seen before, and then I just share my screen here, and then we can see the generative AI features as well. So we've just jumped in here. So Clarilis is accessed via a browser. It's hosted on AWS in region, the customer is, and we've just come into a share purchase suite here. So the user would come in and they'd be filling in information in order to generate a suite of documents to execute a share purchase transaction. And you can see here the questionnaire is split into tabs and sub-tabs in particular areas. So I filled this in already so that we're not seeing me type. But in this case, it's not just one document, we have a suite of documents here. So these are our preliminary documents. guidance as you go through. If I turn those preliminary documents off, then it's a dynamic questionnaire. And so the questions you're asked are relevant to what you're doing today. In a given transaction, you might come in for one document, might be in a confidentiality agreement or heads of terms today, in which case you can fill in the information required to draft that document. Tomorrow, you might be coming in for your share purchase agreement, etc.
So James, sorry, just to pause, that's really clever. So obviously the Clarilis platform saves the information pertaining to the client and the matter. And then you come in and when you're ready to draft the next document, it already has that information captured. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the questionnaire is around your transaction rather than your document. It would be a pain to have to come in every time you want an additional document on your transaction to have to enter the same information again. And especially where you've already typed in information about the target, for example, or the buyer here, all of that information should just be stored in the system, and then you can supplement it with additional information as you go through. So there's a lot of depth here. We've gone for the full screen experience, representing as much in tables as we possibly can in order to make it a nice experience and for the end user. So that's Clarilis kind of core in terms of document automation. So we go through, we fill in this questionnaire. As we go, we can preview any of the documents. So it's building a share purchase agreement here behind the scenes for us. And we can see a preview. We can navigate around the preview if we wanted to. We can produce a red line for current changes. And so just showing you jumping around where you have a defined term, then you can navigate either way. So you can go to references to the Corporation Tax Act, or you can click in. So just trying to make this a useful experience in terms of seeing your document being built, and you can see red lines as well. So it's producing the suite of documents. So when we are ready to produce our draft, so the output would be a Word document. We've answered the questions in a particular way, which means in order to complete our transaction, we need the following documents. So that it not only automates the content of the documents, but it knows which documents you need in a given scenario.
I imagine that's quite a good training tool as well, if you have more junior associates involved in a matter.
Yeah, and it's the level of guidance that you have in the questionnaire as well to configure that for a particular firm. And we say, how much information about what is going on under the hood do we include in the user experience in the questionnaire? If you do, this is the consequence. This is the process that's going to be applied to your documents. So,
and I did notice before there was a question about Companies House documents, which is strictly for the UK. So I imagine this would be configurable for whatever jurisdiction you're in, and you would upload your own templates to be populated in the system. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've chosen the share purchase suite because it's pretty universal in terms of someone is buying a group of companies, but the entity types. So in different jurisdictions, it will gather different information about the entity. It might have a zip code lookup here or a postcode lookup, or it might go off to the local Companies House equivalent in particular jurisdictions. Or if there's not one, then the user would type in the company information. So we link to various sources and aggregated sources like Bureau van Dijk as well for global company information, but it's whatever the client is comfortable using, and we'll import as much information as we can. So in this case, we've imported the target's details. We could get security information in relation to this particular document if we wanted to, and download charges in relation to the company. So all within the user experience, not having to go off and click and copy things from other sources. So it's dynamically creating the whole suite of documents that we've asked for as we go in the process. So if we imagine that we've gone through that whole process, this would take about 20-25 minutes in this particular use case for a share purchase suite. We've done that, and then we come to the point where we would normally go off and produce the Word documents or PDFs and maybe work on them further if there was anything else we needed to do before sending it out to the client. AI draft. So we were talking earlier about how we've approached generative AI. We have a task-based approach, and the idea is that you're within your document automation experience, you've filled in your questionnaire, and then you need something else. And so we have tasks here, which are the most common things that we might need to supplement our drafting. And if I say that we wanted a defined term here, then the middle window is where we have our conversation. That will be very familiar to everybody. So we can request any type of drafting that we like. We don't have to say, you are a lawyer working in so-and-so jurisdiction. I would like a defined term. I'd like it to be like this. All of the kind of prompt engineering, which you might if you're going direct to a language model. We just say we want a definition, we just tell it what we want. So there's a couple of examples here, material adverse change, for example. Then it's gone off, in this case, it's gone off to one of OpenAI's models, and it's generated a suggested definition for us. We then have the conversation in the normal way if we wanted to adjust that, and we're not committing to put this in our document at the moment, but it's giving us we can have the conversation to refine. Let's say I prefer the first version. I can then bring that into my document. Now, behind the scenes, AI draft is determining where that definition should go in your particular document. Easy with definitions, it should go in the definition section, and then it will put it in the appropriate place. Let's say I just wanted one more defined term, and I wanted to have some warranties in relation to open source software. And in this case, where the scenario would be that there isn't a definition of open source software in our particular template that we're working with, and so therefore we need one, and it would be handy for us to have one in our document. So we brought it across to the right. We can edit this content here if we want to, adjust it before it goes into our agreement. If we generate something which is a particularly good example of a definition of open source software, and we wanted to share that with our KM team, then we can click KM here, and that will send that to the person responsible for this set of documents within the firm. And that is a virtuous circle, because if you generate something which is really good and should be used by everybody, then it should be in the template. And so therefore send it to the KM team, and they can filter for quality. But if it is good, then it will go back into the template and then be used in the automation going forward as an additional option, let's say. So we've got two definitions there. Let's generate a clause as well. So it could be anything. I'll just say an arbitration clause just for speed here. And then all of the context that we're in, because we provided context in the questionnaire by answering questions, all of the kind of codified legal knowledge. And this is where the innovation PSLs at Clarilis come into their own, in that they have codified exactly what good looks like in relation to clauses, in relation to defined terms and everything. So you're not really having to have any great knowledge of generative AI in order to generate something sensible out of Clarilis AI draft.
Can I just pause you there? So when I'm generating a clause, the nice thing is I don't necessarily have to add a ton of context, because it's already grounded in the context that you've pre-coded into that. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we will send the context with the request, both context of the transaction that you're in, but no PII, so no confidential information will pass, and we'll filter that on our side. And then the codified legal knowledge of our team as to what good looks like in relation to the particular task that we're tackling. And that will all go with your request to the language model of your choice, whether that's hosted by the firm or whether it's one of the available language models.
That's very clever. I like that. It's a smart kind of systems prompt architecture underneath the surface that you're not necessarily seeing on the front end.
It's just making it as easy as you can. If you want a defined term, you just say what defined term you want, and then it just does its stuff behind the scenes. It interacts in an appropriate way, and then just gives you the context, the content that you're asking for. So now you say, okay, you've used some generative AI content, and you've got some additional definitions, but that going to go into the document? One is positioning. For this arbitration clause, it's determined that it should go, in this case, after the governing law clause in our agreement. For the earn-out schedule, it's put it after Schedule 11 as well. So that's, again, happening as a parallel process behind the scenes. But then you've got generative AI content and you've got doc auto content, and you're putting them both into the same agreement, which sounds like a terrible idea, because the doc auto content is solid and you shouldn't have to review that again, but the generative AI content, then you should. And so the way that we've tackled that, if I go and I generate the share purchase agreement as well, it will go back through the process of doc auto, but now we've got some generative content in that document, as well as the document automation drafting. And so we have a warning at the top, which basically says, make sure that you check the Gen AI content. And if we go to our definitions here, you will see that it's put the definition of material adverse change into the document in the appropriate place with the appropriate formatting, as it's adopted the house style of the document that it's in. And then it would have, if I had selected with open source software, put that in as well. So we'll generate that again. Now, arbitration, again, it's put it in an appropriate place. Again, adopting the formatting and burnout as well. It's highlighted it all in yellow because that's the content that we have to review particularly carefully in this agreement. And so it can't be anything you want it to be. It just depends on your need, but it's all highlighted in yellow. It's all in the same document. It's all adopted, everything that you adopted, the kind of conventions of your document. So it's ready for you to then take into Word and work on going forward. So we've got our definition of open source software there as well.
I've actually never seen this before, James. I think it's such a thoughtful implementation of generative AI because it really is promoting responsible use of it. It's really encouraging and pushing the firm to do its verification where that verification should be focused around the generated text. So
yeah, and it's put the open source software definition in the intellectual property and IP section as well. So it's intelligently determining where you need this content. And so it's, the general approach is, if you're not comfortable, we can turn it off, but it's useful. But let's be realistic about where the language models are. And so therefore we need to be calling out this content to have a higher level of review. So
But if you do want it, then it is included in Clarilis. It's not an additional cost or no. Okay.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. We continue to develop it at pace, as you'd imagine. Everything's moving on very fast, but it's built around this kind of core approach of the join between document automation and generative AI.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James, for showing that to us. It's really interesting to see the way that the whole platform now works together and how it's evolved. I'm sure many of the viewers will be interested in learning more. So as usual, we'll put a URL across the bottom of the screen to allow you to reach out to James and the team at Clarilis. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Nikki. Pleasure.
And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.